Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1 of Puck Watching STL. I'm Luke Koenig, Nick Koenig, my brother, to my right on the screen. We're so happy that you've got to join us today for the inaugural episode of Puck Watching. And really, to give a brief introduction to us, we are two brothers of Jake Koenig, a part of the ball watching sort of network here, and we're excited to include the interesting story of the St. Louis Blues recently, which we will happily get into as we go along. But a little bit about me. I'm right now residing in Boston, Massachusetts, but although a local guy born and raised a St. Louis Blues super fan, and have decided, you know what, let's do this thing with Nick, who is also a super fan, and you can get into this, Nick, on your own.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Luke. But yeah, I'm Nick Koenig. I'm one of the older brothers of Luke. Obviously, Jake over there at ball watching with Justin. And I'm also from St. Louis. Super fan of the Blues. Been a huge Blues fan for a long time. And 2019 kind of set that in stone, I would say. I think that happened with a lot of people. But I moved away from St. Louis when I was 18, going to TCU. Spent about 7 years in Texas, and then just came back to St. Louis about a year and a half ago with my now wife. And to provide some context to you guys on why we wanted to start this podcast, for the most part, we wanted to have normal, casual conversations as most Blues fans do. Wanted to keep it that way and keep it light, but also bring you guys some guests that we have potential access to, and we want to bring some experts on to help provide, I guess, that side of the story for the Blues as well. There's no shortage of analysts and reporters for the Blues that have a lot of knowledge. So we're looking forward to that part of it. That's not going to be for this episode, obviously, but we want to do that and also have some topics on there, and we'll, I think, fine tune that as we grow and do more episodes and get that under our belt. But we want to have some debates. We want to have some hot takes. Luke and I are pretty notorious, if those that don't know us, of having extremely heated debates around all sorts of topics. But the Blues are absolutely one of them and fall under that umbrella.
Yeah.
So very excited to have that side of it. And we'll see if we can get a little bit of that on this episode, as the Blues have gone through a lot, even in this last week alone. But we're very excited, and we appreciate everyone tuning in. YouTube, X. Sorry for the Insta problems. We'll figure that out at a later time. But that's just, I don't know, separate. We'll figure it out. But that's it for me.
Nick said an important thing there that about experts. We are not experts on this. We've been following the Blues for a long time, but we're not hockey guys ourselves. We've been surrounding ourselves around the sport for a while, but not actually on the ice. So that's an important thing to mention, and that's why we need the guests, which we'll happily be getting, hopefully, in a little bit in the future here. But we cannot go. I think we've missed 52 games already so far this season, and that's a lot of games, and there's a lot of ground to cover. And I think we can't immediately jump to the conclusion of what's been going on recently with this 4-game skid without looking all the way towards before the season even began. And so let's start with expectations here going in to the 24-25 Blues season. They were 26th in odds to win the cup, about plus 20,000. And I think you'd be a fool to know to say that they probably would be chasing a cup this year. I think maybe in a similar grounds to last season, but I wasn't expecting too much. But with the Holloway and Broberg additions, you thought, man, maybe this team would have just a little bit more life and could potentially hunt for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think on that front, what the Blues had 93 points last season. And to be frank about it, they overachieved incredibly. I don't know if you disagree with that, Luke. The goaltending by Hofer and Bennington was the thing that stood out the most, I think, of last year. I think there was some good additions and complements to them. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Booch, all having decent years. However, Bennington and Hofer bailed them out time and time again, and they were, I would say, extremely fortunate to be that well above 500 and be in contention. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they were really not eliminated from that playoff race until they played Vegas. I remember pretty distinctly in
Yep.
March, and they dropped it. Pretty bad performance. I don't really think the expectations were that high necessarily, but they overachieved. And that's why I think most people are extremely disappointed with where we are now. But still, I think there's a lot of buildup to be made. We come into this year, Bannister has a 30-19-2 record with the Blues once he took over for Berube. And we entered this season about 2 months in, I would say. Bannister gets the boot because Jim Montgomery becomes available after his firing from the Boston Bruins. So fired, what was it? Fired on a Sunday, hired on a Tuesday? Was
Hired
that
on Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday?
Yeah.
Thursday. Army comes out really excited about the hire. Blues fans extremely excited about the hire, rightfully so. He's had some successful seasons, Boston and Dallas, and was the assistant in St. Louis for a while. And a lot of the players liked him. Everyone thought it'd be a really good change of pace. And then we fast forward, Blues are playing a little bit better. We have the additions of Broberg and Holloway with those matching offers that Army was able to do. And things are, fine. We're not the best team in the NHL, but we're contending just like last year. I would say, I don't know if you disagree with that, Luke. But then we arrived in January. And I think that's where things really took a turn for the absolute worst. And there's a lot to talk about there. But Luke, if you want to start
Yeah.
with all
Well,
of that.
I want to, there's a lot you just said there. And
Yeah.
because I want to almost go back a little bit because
Yeah.
when you look at the team last year, I don't think there's a lot of difference when it comes to the overall roster, excluding the additions of Broberg and Holloway. Like when you look at this, like you say, oh, like Marco Scandella was on that team last year, and Callie Rosen and Sammy Blais and all
Sammy
these.
Blais.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but these people weren't contributing members of the team. All the contributors are still there. And so the top five that you have right now in scoring with Kyrou, Thomas, Booch, Shen, Neighbors, and all of that, and Holloway, like besides Holloway, those are your normal contributors. So if anything, I think an average Blues fan like myself when going into the season would be like, oh, like you're just adding another offensive piece to a team that had 92 points last season and lost their playoff contention, I think, with 2 games left in the season last year. And they were 42-33 last year, which is quite the I think 42-33 and something and like 4 or something like that. But quite the season. And right now we're absolutely nowhere close to that. And it's important to realize that. And I think you touched a great topic, which is Jordan Bennington and Joel Hofer that season, is that we do not have that this year. And also some players are underperforming.
I think you could say that. I think you could say that about all sorts of players on the roster. I wouldn't even just leave Hofer and Bennington out to dry. I did, see a stat the other day where you have goals saved above expected, and it's one of the advanced stats. But for those that care about that kind of thing, I think Bennington has saved just over a goal above expected on average throughout this entire season. And that was good for 40th in the league as far as it pertains to goalies.
Yeah.
And Hofer was worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think came in at 73 out of all the goalies in contention in the NHL. And he was at -5 point something.
Yeah.
So and if you show that advanced stat last year, we're talking, I think Bennington had over 8 or 9 goals saved above expected when it was all said and done. I think Hofer was the same. So they bailed us out, and we don't have that help from them this year.
No.
Despite, I think, a defense that's better with the addition of Fowler, Broberg, Parayko having some would say a record year, at least points wise, goals wise. He's having a very, very good year.
Yep.
And we don't have that supplemental help from the goalies or the offense as well. And that's a whole other story that we need to get into as well as far as pertains to our wingers and centers.
Yeah, I think when you look at the first 10 games and you think of, because I think expectations were probably the highest it's been since the playoff drought began. It's not really a drought, but you're gonna be your
We're
third.
on the
Yeah,
verge of a drought.
right. You're
Yeah.
gonna be your third
Mhm.
season in a row if things don't really turn around dramatically quick. But you had a loss to Minnesota pretty early on, exposed a lot of the weaknesses of the team. You had a loss to Montreal, who was not expected to be as good as what they are right now. So they're a competing team, but also had a couple wins. Carolina, who's now probably going to be one of the top teams in the league after Mikko Rantanen trade, won against them. And then you also won against Toronto, which you love it because it's against Craig Berube's team now. And obviously we love Chief, but also at the same time, Toronto's a really talented team, and the Blues are not the talented team that Toronto has. So those are some important wins early on, but there's also some important losses to think about. And I think you saw some of the weaknesses with the offense in some of those games, but you also saw the high caliber defense that you saw. And Parayko particularly, man, I have been so impressed with him. And for a while, after that COVID season, when it comes to 21, 22, I was really nervous about that guy. He had some back issue, some injury that I didn't think that he was going to recover from. And if he would have continued to play like that. But man, the last two seasons, particularly, I think this one shows it the most, is just his way of coming up and like at the blue line, you're able to stop right there, that defender or that winger, and he just immediately brings him to the halt. And does a great job of the 50-50 puck battles down low. And that's what defenders like him, who are extremely well sized, have to do. You have to win those 50-50 battles and be confident on the boards. And that's exactly what we missed from him for a long time. And now we're seeing it from him. And it's very incredible to watch the dramatic shift that he's had. But then you counteract that with one of Justin Falk's worst seasons I've ever seen him play, with the confidence that I had in him after he was traded from the Hurricanes, to where I was like, oh, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to fill maybe not even a void, really, just a better player than Joel Edmondson was when he was traded. So, but that's what he was filling that void. But now he just is not the player who he was traded to be.
No, his value and contribution has dropped off significantly. He may have a goal in the last whole year. That's the part. He is supposed to be somewhat offensive minded. He's not that big, so it's not like he's a Torrey Krug, which obviously out for the year, bummer of an injury. Also has had a lot of struggles.
Yeah.
So that wasn't necessarily something I don't think a lot of Blues fans were extremely bummed out about. He had a better year last year, but in terms of offensive production, we would probably need expect a lot more from him to justify him being kind of liability, I would say, on the defensive end of the ice.
Yes.
But with Falk, there's no doubt that there's been a drop off. There is a serious case to be made where, not to foreshadow what we're going to talk about later, but to Brandon Saad, Justin Falk. I think we're entering that time frame for him where he has a couple years left on his contract. He's getting paid a lot of money relative to what he does for the Blues. So I don't know what you think about that, Luke, but I think there needs to be a lot of things put on the table as far as this team is concerned for Army and Steen and Montgomery to think about as far as roster management.
Yeah. I think the problem is with Falk right now too, is that you have a guy like Broberg who can be a very good D partner with Falk. And now you see him with Tucker, who isn't, he's a third pairing right now, and he probably isn't anything more than that. And that's fine. You can have a third pairing. But I'm worried though, like he doesn't have a consistent partner with him. And we saw that with Parayko. Right after Bouwmeester left, he didn't have a solid D partner for a long time. Like they tried it with Letty, that didn't work. They're trying it with Broberg right now, and it goes either way sometimes. But I think him and Cam Fowler look the best right now, and so I think having those two as like a committed D pair together that have some chemistry is great. But when you have Justin Falk out there and you're not sure, you're kind of switching up the lines. It could be Broberg, it could be Tucker, it could be, it doesn't matter. Like that was an issue for him, so I'll give him some benefit of the doubt with that, but that doesn't excuse the play that he's had this season. He's pretty well low in the minus category. And Broberg is the plus leading defenseman right now with +7, which isn't even that good.
Falk has the worst plus minus, I believe, on the team.
Yeah, that would sound right.
It seems that he always finds himself on the ice when there are goals against.
Yep.
And a lot of our defensemen actually don't have a very bad plus minus. When you think about Fowler, Broberg, Parayko, Suter, they really don't. So, I don't know what you can really do with him right now. I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams, and I hate to bash on Justin Falk because he did have probably 1 or 2 good years on the Blues post Pietrangelo departure, but there's just been a huge drop off. And I remember last year he was hurt for a very long time, and he didn't ever seem to be the same since that injury. And we have not seen him recalibrate and return to form at all. And if anything, it's gotten much worse. But when you look at the defense, I don't think that's your main issue.
No,
I think we need to look forward in order to actually figure out what the problem with this team is. And for me, you have to look at your top lines. And when we're looking at our top lines, we're thinking about Jordan Kyrou, we're thinking about Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, Braden Shen, Dylan Holloway.
Yeah.
A couple of those guys haven't had the worst years. But I'd love to get your thoughts there, Luke, on those 5 or 6 guys that are performing adequately, up to expectations, and the guys that are underperforming or very much underperforming from your perspective.
There were no expectations coming in for Holloway. I think there was some expectation. I think like you saw his performance in the playoffs in Edmonton, and you thought that okay, this guy could maybe be a nice third liner, and right now he's our first liner. And so you talk about exceeding expectations. Yeah, that's Dylan Holloway for sure. And not that he's the best player we have in our team right now, but when it comes to the ceiling that he was put at the beginning of the season, he is way above that ceiling right now. No doubt in my mind.
You can make a case he's the best forward we have right now.
I think you got to give it to Kyrou just for the way he's played in comparison to later or past years.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll allow it. We can circle back.
Yeah, I think the whole the Shen and Kyrou thing just said about Kyrou, but Shen, honestly, you're kind of getting what you need from Shen right now. I don't think anybody was expecting him to have a 30-goal season this year, let alone a 25-goal season. No. And I don't think he's going to get to 25, but he probably will get to 20, maybe a little bit above 20. But that's where I see his ceiling. I think he's proving to be pretty good right there. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think Shen is right where he needs to be. Because I think after last season, people saw it. I was like, yeah, this is probably where he should steadily be pretty consistently.
I mean, the last 2 years, I would say Braden Shen has drastically performed below expectations.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really any workaround there. However, he's been better this year, and he's benefited from playing on a better line. So I think that has helped him. I don't think Braden Shen's contract is a good thing for the Blues. I don't think so. I know he's the captain. I know he does step up in moments where we may need a spark, which happens very frequently right now.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Braden Shen, unfortunately, is good enough to justify him being tied with the Blues for as long as he is at this moment. I felt that way for a very long time. So this isn't just a recent development. I know he's had a better year, but the Blues have some bad contracts out there. And Braden Shen is probably one of them that I'm going to put in that category. It could be unpopular, but I don't know.
What is it? Is it 6.5?
6.5.
Yeah.
God, he
For
got
it was
like a
like
9-year
11 years.
contract. Yeah. Was it 11? Oh my
It was
God, that's
something
crazy.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was nuts. But you're probably right. Like, does he deserve 6.5 million every year? Maybe not. But does he deserve 5? Probably, just because he's the captain and he's won a cup with us, and he had some pretty contributing moments in his history as a team with the team. But I want to move down to the second line, which is that's where the issues are, because we talked about Kyrou for a second. We can get into that, but I think when it comes to Buchnevich, Thomas, and Neighbors, this is where I have the most problem, because first of all, Neighbors was a guy who scored 27 goals last year, which, again, you talked about Holloway with the ceiling last year. Nobody knew that was that guy's ceiling. Absolutely not. I mean, maybe a third liner again. And he turned out to be your nasty guy in the front of the net that would just be dishing pucks into the net from like the blue paint, which is crazy, and off
Like a
rebound.
good neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But like incredible stuff he did last season. But when you look at, this one, you say, well, the team is not performing offensively as like it was last season with him. But I don't know if it's his fault. He's 13 goals right now. I think he's on pace for about 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, if you want 20 goal seasons from the guy consistently, you can get it. But if that's all what you're gonna get, and you lose Brandon Saad, who was also, I think he was 26 goals last year, you lose a guy like
Yeah.
him. He's gone, and he wasn't going to be doing anything probably for the rest of his career. That didn't look like it this season. But when you lose that, and you don't have Neighbors doing well either, it makes a lot of sense why the offensive struggles are happening.
Yeah, I mean, Neighbors, if you look at the lines a couple months ago, you had Jake Neighbors on line one, line two,
Yeah.
and he since has been demoted to three. And when you get dropped down to a three or third or fourth line, third line is not the same as fourth, but the third line does not have a bunch of firepower. And you're probably not going to find a bunch of goals like you probably did last year.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't really know what else to say about Jake Neighbor. His goals have been different this year, which actually gives me a little bit of hope for him that
Yeah.
maybe he could be a player that's not just, creating a lot of havoc and chaos around the crease area, which is great. I love when he does do that. And I think someone has to do that for one team. But it seems like that dimension is not as much there for him as it was last year.
Yeah.
So potentially, he could be developing into a better overall player, but just not seeing the results we did last year. I never expected him to have over 25 goals this year. I didn't think that was probably going to happen. But hopefully he does get to 20 and he can like, I don't know, keep up that consistency and keep continuing to get better. He's still really young. So no hope lost for Jake Neighbors at this point, from my perspective.
Yeah. I think when you look at the rest of the line, though, I think it gets a little concerning. Although I'm going to say that Thomas is having a good year. He's not having a great year. He's having a good year. And people, when you look at his point totals, you'll think, like 38 points. That's not good. And it's not. But when consider the injury that he had, I missed 12 games, and that cost the Blues a lot when he was gone. I think you got to give him the benefit of the doubt there. And I'm giving a lot of benefit of the doubt today. I'm going to stop doing that. But for Thomas particularly, though, that guy was the cornerstone of this franchise last season, and it showed this was the guy. And I still think, though, if Robert Thomas was not in the lineup for as many games as he has been this season, we would be in even a worse situation right now. So I think we can put the rumors to bed about, and the stuff talked to bed about how Robert Thomas is not having this great year. He's not having a great year, but if the Blues didn't have this guy, I'm going to tell you right now, we'd be looking at way more games below 500 than what we are right now. I can tell you that. He's a great player. I
would
always
agree. I do want to plug for a second here our Instagram, X, and YouTube usernames here just to make sure you guys know where to follow. So on X, you guys can find us on at Puck Watching STL. We're live streaming on X currently, and on Instagram, more of the same, Puck Watching STL, and then on YouTube again, same sort of deal. And yeah, like and subscribe if you can. If you guys are enjoying it, feel free to leave comments, leave feedback. We're more than open to it. But while we have you guys here, we wanted to make sure you all were aware of it, of all the platforms that we're on. And I do want to. Robert Thomas got hurt, broke his ankle this year. Injuries happen. That's totally fine. He has been a bit overshadowed because of Kyrou having a better year, or at least a more consistent year, I think, than people expected him to have. However, his play has dropped off pretty significantly the last few weeks, and I feel like that is a huge reason why they are struggling. Robert Thomas, I think, at the end of the day, needs to score more goals. You know, he loves throwing those passes to the front of the net, seeing if someone is able to get a stick on it. Great. I like when he does that sometimes, but you and I were talking about it the other day. For every good Robert Thomas pass, there are probably 7 bad ones. That's fine. And that's fine. The good to great players are going to have that type of mentality. And I think that's okay, because he's a playmaker and he's got to try to make plays, especially for this team that struggles like they do offensively. But you do have to take the bad with the good on this. And he is, I would say, going through a slump. And I really hope that he can find a rhythm and score some goals. He has been getting some bad bounces. I would hate to act like he hasn't had, some good showings. He's hit the post a few times the last few games. You got to feel for the guy. He needs to buy one to get his head on right. But I'm not losing faith on Robert Thomas. He just needs to have the next few games are going to be important before Four Nations, I think, for him.
Yes.
And I think he needs to score a goal or have a multi-point game in the next few.
Yeah. He played the only season he's ever played 82 games was this past season. And and he had 26 goals, which was, I'm sorry, not 26 goals. Yeah, he did have 26 goals. And he had, I think, 60 assists or something like that. So he had like more than 80 points. And so you can tell that's the effect of being healthy. And when you break your ankle, I mean, I've broken my ankle once in my life. I'm very weak. So I would necessarily think that that's a very easy injury to come back from, knowing from experience, and especially playing professional hockey with it. But he's a tough guy, and all hockey players are. So you got to expect the guy to come back with some force. We haven't seen the force. I agree that he hasn't had the best couple of weeks, but again, when talking about that, you know exactly who this person on the Blues is. That is the guy we need to be playing well for the whole team to be playing well. Because 100%. When Thomas drops off, then the rest of the stock goes down. And so you're right. There is a lot of pressure on Thomas, and I will not doubt that. But it's a little concerning that we rely on a guy like that so much, to where now our stock is dropping just because he's had a not so good past couple weeks.
Yeah, no, it's concerning. The Blues have been known for a very long time for depth. I think you can make the case maybe Vladimir Tarasenko was this guy that was going to be the face of the NHL for a while. I don't really think that ever really panned out. I remember he was on the cover of like NHL 17. That was cool. But he was never that guy. He wasn't a Sidney Crosby. He wasn't an Ovechkin. He certainly was never a Connor McDavid or McKinnon. Yeah, and he was fun. He was a really fun watch, but he didn't have that. He had a burst here and there, but he's not going to fly through guys and be finishing, like you see McDavid or McKinnon do. He had a crazy shot. He was physical, fun watch, but never panned out. So the Blues are a depth team, and when your depth players are not consistently producing, it's not like they're scoring a goal a game, but at least, you have 50, 60 points, you're scoring and you're assisting and you're doing the hard parts of hockey. That doesn't happen right now, and I think we can talk more about that. But look, we did get a question.
Yeah, I wanted to address
a fun one. Yeah, you can read it. Go ahead.
Well, are you talking about the
not the Jim Montgomery one?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the Montgomery one. Sorry, which one were you talking about?
I just see the one you see the Blues splashing at the deadline with
Yeah, yeah,
Temple.
yeah,
Oh
from
yeah,
Hockey
that sounds
G.
yeah.
Yeah,
G91.
Hockey G. Yeah, he's an old friend. So, well, the Blues splashing at the deadline. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think the whole Sod thing, when we can get into him, because also there's a question about Sod later. But I think with him having some renewed cap space with this, I still think though that unless things really drastically turn around the next few weeks, where like I think the trade deadline is I think in early March, I want to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see us doing anything particular despite the Sod thing, because that means this team has to go on and win a couple games in a row, which we are 0-7-1 in doing in three-game win streaks. Have never done that. Only team in the NHL to have not done that before this season. That is absurd. Absurd stat.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. However, I mean, I would love for them to have fun at the deadline. There's no reason to do so. They don't have I wouldn't consider them having any type of shot at this point. I tweeted it out this morning, but they have below a 10% chance now of making the playoffs. I think if you rewind the clock a week and a half ago, they had just below 20.
Yeah.
So the odds have significantly diminished on the probability of them being able to compete for that second wild card spot. The icing on the cake, I think, which we can talk about later, is the Colorado game. But the Sod contract, of course, it clears up some cap space. They do have room to move around a bit, but they have other obligations. I know they're going to have to pay Suter bonuses if he completes 60 games or at that 60 game threshold, which is in 10 more games. So they're going to have to pay people out, and they need to make sure that they have enough money for that. And I just looked at the unrestricted free agents for next year. It is a loaded campaign
Yeah.
of players. So
Yeah.
if they're able to clear certain amounts of cap space, maybe Krug, you can either offload or LTIR Krug. I don't understand what's really going on with him at this point. I don't know if he has a chance at really playing again, unfortunately. Feel for the guy. But there's a lot of room to offload cap, trade players. You may have to eat some of the salary, but Saad's mutual contract termination certainly helps when you're trying to reload and make sure that you can make a push for a legitimate free agent signing this summer. So at the deadline, they could be sellers. Wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get rid of someone.
Who would they
Unfortunately,
sell? Who would they
I would love
sell?
to. I mean, we were just talking about it. Falk and Suter, I would be more than okay to sell.
I
That
just
sounds
don't.
great.
Yeah, but like, who's gonna really like? The problem is that when you sell somebody, for example, when we did it 2 seasons ago, when we did it with O'Reilly and Tarasenko and Barbashev, these guys were contributing members to teams and were pretty active. And when you look at Falk, again, I'm on the guy's side. I want the guy to do well, but he's not doing that well. And like his name 4 seasons ago is so much different than his name now. And so I don't know if teams are going to be really calling. I don't think it's going to be a Brandon Saad situation where Doug Armstrong is calling teams and nobody wants him. But I don't think anybody's going to be picking up the phone and saying, I
No,
want Falk.
I'm not at all saying that people should be handing over an arm and a leg to grab Justin Falk at the deadline.
Yeah.
Certainly no. I do think sometimes there is a case for teams to move players
Yeah.
despite maybe having to retain some of the money and just literally throwing a sixth round pick that's conditional. I honestly don't care. We have a lot of young people in our organization in the AHL. When you look at like Tucker and Kessel, and there's other guys down there too, I would rather them play.
Yeah.
I honestly would. I don't think there's a great case to keep Justin Falk on the roster for another year. I mean, this season, okay, fine. For another whole year, I think that would be a huge mistake. So, and Nick Leddy, exactly the same way. I had the same thoughts about Nick Leddy, even
Wait,
though he
it
hasn't
still
played since
exists?
November.
He exists?
somehow. I
Okay.
tweeted about it. That whole injury saga is crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
I
Lower
it's I
body.
like that
He's
tweet.
on the ice all the time, and he just
Yeah.
doesn't play. And I'm like, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
understand it.
He practices almost all the time. And
I
then
know.
and then it's
I
just
don't
like
get it.
but he's still long term. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically like again, also people forget we still have Torrey Krug on this team and technically, and I don't know where he's gonna go. And
I don't know.
I mean, just remember, by the way, like Torrey Krug was a consistent member of the team last season, before the injury. Or no, I'm sorry. Did he got injured, I think, at the end. But right, is that I don't remember.
I think he played the whole year,
Did he play the whole year?
and
Okay, well
and
then
then
he's got
they
injury time.
LTIR'd a few weeks before the season. Everyone's
Right.
like, "Ah, no, shoot!"
Yeah. It
And
was a
then,
yeah, that's a good
yeah,
reaction. That's a
yeah.
very good rendition of that.
But Krug's like he's a fun guy. He's some energy here and there. He's getting older, but I remember when we signed him. Not to go back down memory lane, but when we got him, I was excited. I
Yeah.
thought Krug could be a good player for the Blues, especially after watching him in 2019 and him laying Robert Thomas out on the ice, which was definitely an illegal hit, was not called. But regardless, he scored goals. He created a lot of offense. He was fun.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really saw much of that at all with him as long as he's been on the Blues. Besides that 1 year, which was, what was that, 2020, 2021,
That's
where
first season.
his first season, and I thought he was good. But
The power
after
play.
that,
He was
yeah,
great in the power
with the
play.
power play, he was good. And the
Yeah.
Blues were good that year.
I don't wanna
So,
touch the Krug Pietrangelo thing right now. It's too much to handle. But I do wanna talk about it's funny because you said that the hit was illegal, but I will say it probably was illegal, but also when you look at say, well, would you rather them call the penalty there for charging 5-minute major, or would you rather call and then have them call the Achari trip, in game
no,
5?
God, yeah.
Clearly a trip.
I think that was cosmic justice for that hand pass against the Sharks. So I don't care
Wow.
about it. I
The
didn't feel
justice
bad.
still goes just a
It
series
did.
later.
It works, even
Okay,
though we won the series. That was
okay.
some BS on that one too. That was insane.
I thought the
So
justice was the 5-0 win the next day, but or sorry, the 3-2 win and then the 5-0 win.
nope, it was
But
for the
okay,
hand pass.
but we're not getting into 2019. We have to talk about this season.
Yeah.
And so, but I also wanted to touch on this too, and we have a nice little comment from Michael Stromberg, who is a Blackhawks fan. And he says, "Good stuff, boys. Saad's best years are with the Blackhawks. Well, we don't need to talk about the franchise. They're ruining Bedard right now. Totally agree. But Brandon Saad, particularly, obviously, we saw the move this past week, and I think the move was for the better. I think you get the younger guys like Texier to be able to get into the lineup pretty consistently and see if he really is this guy who is a young gun and who can develop into some player that can be a contributing member of this team, because we haven't seen that this year because he just hasn't played that much. But I don't know if it's possible if we can see that, because again, I don't think Montgomery's too high on him. We were talking about that earlier. And so that's concerning. And so, like, what does that really move do? Well, it frees up the cap space, but not much else, because he doesn't really do anything, for the Blues. He was not like that. He was I don't think he put this team stock down, but I also don't think he really helped us that much either. He was just kind of out.
Texier or
I'm
Saad?
sorry, I'm talking about Saad. Saad.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, no. He had that one hat trick, which was cool. What was that, a couple months ago? That
Scored
was the most noteworthy. I don't
a
understand
couple
how that
months
even
ago.
happened. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, Brandon Saad, here comes another 20 goals this year. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that couldn't have been more wrong.
He scored
Uh,
in 3 games this season and then 7 goals. That was the craziest stat. But
yeah.
keep going. Sorry.
A quick thing on the Blackhawks, just 5 seconds. At least Blackhawks fans can say that they're at least retaining 50% of Rantanen's salary, so he's maybe technically on the roster for some Bedard help.
Yeah.
But that is crazy. Getting rid of that's
I
it.
saw
I
some
just thought
great
that was
memes on that.
hilarious. Just thought that was hilarious that they're retaining 50% of Rantanen's salary, but don't have Mikko Rantanen. But Saad, yeah, I'm totally content. I know some people were bummed that he signed with Vegas, and I'm like, what did you expect him to do? And let's not act like Vegas just got a steal with Brandon Saad. We all wanted him to leave. So I don't really know why people would be upset about that. Vegas is going to Vegas, and they'll sign players at the deadline every year because they're always contenders and they always spend to the cap. And then all of a sudden, Mark Stone will just go on LTIR, and then they'll be able to spend the cap, and then it'll come back before the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's usually what they do. I don't think that happened this year, but the Knights will be good. I don't think it's going to be because they signed Brandon Saad.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think he just has another chance of a cup, and I think he'll be a, solid third or fourth line guy because Vegas is too good to where like they don't have a. And this is another important point that the third and fourth lines for St. Louis is totally different than the third and fourth lines of some other teams because when you have a guy like Oscar Sundqvist who's centering this third line right now, occasionally, sometimes he's not, sometimes he doesn't, but he's done it the most of the season. And you have a guy sometimes like Jake Neighbors who's on that and, Texier or something like that. You're not going to develop these guys. Sundqvist, unfortunately, it's always sunny in St. Louis. Great guy. Love the guy. He's locker room dude, 100%. And he has 2 cups, clearly a winner. But he does not have the same stuff that he had like earlier in his career. He just doesn't. And he's slower. He's just not as good on the puck. And he just doesn't have the puck handles like he used to when it comes to just being able to skate into the zone pretty easily and be able to dump it in and maybe win a 50-50 puck battle. He's just not as good at that anymore. And it's tough. So Saad wasn't anything with Oscar Sundqvist. So we'll maybe give him that benefit. But when you look at him in Vegas, it's going to be a different story. You have so much more skill down there. But that's my view of the whole Saad thing.
Vegas is going to unlock Brandon Saad.
No,
Is that
no, but he will, I think, be able to do something. Not that he's going to be able to get 7 more goals, but I think like he's a good playoff guy. We never really seen him in the playoffs except once with the team. So, and he did pretty well. So I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to see that, but good for him. Brandon Saad, always liked the guy, but I think I'm happy he's gone.
No, I would agree. I mean, you could talk about the mismanagement, the faulty trades, acquisitions, letting Pietrangelo go. I just saw a comment on YouTube. Obviously, you could pretty much draw a straight line to the struggles of the Blues and the Alex Pietrangelo departure. I feel like that's just something that will always be resonating with Blues fans, especially. Alex Pietrangelo has had fantastic years on the Vegas Golden Knights since he left the Blues. And the Blues, obviously, it did leave room for Parayko to take a step forward. It took him a long time to take a step forward after Pietrangelo left, but he did finally. But imagine having both of those guys locked up on your defense. Where
Don't do this to me.
I mean, I don't know. It's just something that you have to think about in order to evaluate Army's full set of work that he's done since he's gotten to St. Louis. Yeah. And now you get Krug, then you get Justin Falk, all people that we really, if we're being candid, would rather not have on our team at this point, given their age and their level of performance.
Yeah,
it's just a frustrating factor. And then you sign Kyrou and Thomas to an 8x8, fine. And then you wake up one summer day and he did the same thing to Buchnevich, but a 6x8.
Yeah.
And we can go right into the struggles that Pavel Buchnevich has had.
Yeah.
I mean, he is struggling beyond belief right now. He's well below pace of his last few years that he's been on the Blues. And I watched him pretty intently the other day against the Avalanche. He has opportunities. He does. Yeah. And you can tell that the frustration is building.
Yes.
And something has to give, I think, at some point for him. But until then, it's not even close to the struggles of Thomas. Booch is going through something much different.
He's never been a big finisher. I think like he's never been the guy who's going to be this cornerstone of the offense. But he just found ways to score the last couple of years, and it was pretty incredible. And I give him credit. I mean, he's had over 20 goal seasons pretty consistently for the Blues, and he's been like a huge part of the offense. I just don't know. I think the Thomas and him rift too is not good. I don't know if they're not like actually seeing eye to eye, but like on the ice, I don't know if they're connecting as much as they were in the past. And I think that's kind of a part to play with it. But also, Booch, I think he just is not doing what he has been the last couple years. And the points is the easiest explanation, but I just don't know. I think him and Thomas are kind of off cue a little bit right now. And I think also does not help that they don't have a consistent line mate with him either. I mean, it
No,
was Sod
yeah,
Neighbors.
yeah. No, I agree, and I do want to. We'll take about 10 to 15 more minutes here, Luke. I think,
Yeah.
but to address, I think we're good on as far as the roster presently.
Yeah.
But Scott Prunovich moves on last week, gets traded to the Islanders for a conditional 2026 pick. I believe Prunovich has to play 20 games on the Islanders this year in order for us to get that pick. I thought it was fine. I really struggled to see where Prunovich was going to fit, despite lackluster Justin Falk, I guess. I don't really know if Falk and Prunovich are interchangeable fellows as far as defensive pairings would go. But Prunovich struggled, I'd say, a bit when he was on the ice. He's extremely undersized, but he's a Torrey Krug in that sense where he's going to try to ignite an offense. He's played pretty well on the Islanders since he's gone there. I believe he's a +4 on the ice and has 3 points, 3 assists. That's fitting. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know, regardless of how he performs with the Islanders, I don't think that it was a mistake to move Prunovich, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't think it was a mistake either. And I think that Scott Perunovich, Hobie Baker winner, this guy. I mean, he did some incredible stuff in college. And thinking that, a lot of the times it translates, sometimes it doesn't, and you just never know. But you took a chance on the guy. He's undersized, you said. But he has the power to move the puck and be, very active on the blue line. And it's pretty incredible to watch when he was playing out there. And he made an impact sometimes. But I think defensively he was okay. I think he was just like Krug. I don't think he was necessarily a liability out there, but the size just really puts it to a nice perspective of just how tall you have to be on D to be
Not to
successful.
mention injuries, too. People forget
Yeah,
that
of
he was
course.
injured a lot since he had been drafted on the Blues. Horrible injuries as well. So
Yep.
really tough to come back from. So that's another reason why I'm not that upset that they got rid of him and weren't more patient with him, because those injuries, those tell stories a bit on what it's going to look like in the future. And I know that's speculative, but unfortunately, kind of has to be factored in. So
Yeah.
I do wish him the best. I hope he does well. I don't want him to. There's no sourness on my end at all.
100%. I think it's the same way with Saad. I think both those players, you want to see him do well. And Perunovich just never had it, just never had the time, never had the full healthiness. And we needed that. And having Krug as well, you wouldn't have been able to see him that much if Krug actually would have come up as a good player in the last couple of years. But I just feel like if Perunovich, just having him and Krug on the same team, two undersized guys that, basically play the same role on a team on the power play and want to spark offenses. Hard to have those two as well with the same kind of role. So a shame, but I think the Islanders will be lucky to have him. I think he's got a lot of upside, and I hope he stays healthy because that's going to be the way he will continue to play with New York.
Agreed.
So that's cool for him. But also, I wanted to address one more comment here about Jim Montgomery from my buddy here at BC. Why do you think Jim Montgomery is so bad? And so this is a Boston Bruins fan, and I don't even want to talk about this comment. There's no substance behind it, but obviously, again, we talked about it briefly, but we also fail to acknowledge here that there kind of is some substance, unfortunately. Not to say Jim Montgomery is a bad coach at all. He has done a good job with St. Louis, and we are above 500 with him at the helm.
That I don't think we should say that yet.
Well, hold on. Let me finish this. So we definitely have lost 4 in a row. This is the worst skid we've had with them. But right now, the Blues are the 25th team in the league on the power play, 18.5%. League average is about 21%, below league average. And then Penalty kill, 29th in the league, 71.1%. That is abysmal. And that's league average about 78%. So, and there's 32 teams in the league. So the fact that as a coach, you have seen and you've been the person who's been implementing some of these power play and penalty kill strategy, that has been one of your main issues as a concern for me, because that seems like one of the coach's biggest roles. Not to say that, of course, you got to execute as a player, but concerning that there hasn't been much development on that front since Bannister's firing, because it's basically the same, and if not a little worse.
Yeah, I don't honestly. This may sound a bit bleak. I don't think it even matters right now. We're not going to get rid of Jim Montgomery for a long time. You can't keep going through coaches at the rate that the Blues have been going through. Army had extremely high praise for Montgomery once he hired, or before he even hired him, and said once he became available, it was a must-have, and fired Bannister on the spot after not a very bad record the previous year. Rough start in the first part of the season for Bannister. Don't think it was his fault. So I don't know what to really say about Montgomery. Montgomery has a lot of leash. I don't think he has any hot seat issues as it currently stands for the Blues, nor should he. You need to give him a lot more time. And I think this all comes down to roster, and Montgomery can only do so much to try to motivate. I know this was the problem with Berube. He tries to motivate players. I don't know why I always think of Jordan Kyrou like needing to be motivated by coaches. Unfortunately, I don't know how it doesn't work. Yeah. But I always feel like they're talking to Thomas and Kyrou. And I don't really know why, but it does feel that way. So I hope that he can get through to both of those guys and tap into a level that maybe they haven't reached yet. I would say they're at the prime of their careers. They're not going to probably get significantly better. They're 26, 27 years old. They've been in the league since 2018, 2019. They're both on the roster when we won the cup. Thomas played a semi-active role in that playoff run.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's really any more excuses for those two to step up their game. But for Montgomery's sake, I don't know what to say on him. It seems like he's tried to pull some strings, exactly what Bannister and Berube did. And it doesn't really seem to have changed things all that much. There's only so much you can do. So I think the jury's still out on Montgomery. He has a long time to be the coach of the Blues. Unfortunately, I think the roster needs to shake up. It's not going to be the coach.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think unfortunately I've always been in Jim Montgomery's corner, and I'm not going to be out of there for a while. I think a lot of the time it's the players, and I think this gladly brings us into our final topic, which is, are these Blues a playoff team, Nick?
No, I would not say that they're a playoff team. Just to paint the picture of what happened last week, you go to Utah 2 weeks ago, actually today or 2 days ago.
Utah, yeah.
Yeah, you lose in a horrible performance at Utah after you had just beaten Calgary.
Oh, yeah,
and,
sorry.
Yeah.
You're
then
rewinding.
Yep. Yeah, rewinding. You go to Vegas and you think the dream is going to die. You are up 4-2 with 3 minutes left. You let up 2 goals in the last 3 minutes where the Knights pulled their goalie. You end up winning in a shootout, sigh of relief. Okay, we get the Knights at home. Another horrible performance. They lose that game. And then where do you go? You go to Vancouver. No, there was a game in between there.
Yeah.
The Stars.
The Stars in Vancouver.
They played well that game.
Yep.
They did. They lost that game because they hit 4 posts, got the yips when it came to finishing, and they lost. And then they go to Vancouver. It's like, okay, now it's time. You're chasing Vancouver. You have to right the ship. They lose to Vancouver. Yeah. Another horrible performance. Bad. And then the icing on the cake was, of course, Friday night against Colorado, where not an easy game. Nathan McKinnon is a god. I think he's probably, if not the best. You have McDavid up there, the second best player in the NHL. When that guy gets the puck, everyone is just excited in the arena, which is a feeling I don't think any Blues fans have really ever had about a player, at least really in my lifetime. I don't know if you would say differently. But when that guy touches the puck and he has a full head of steam, everyone's like, something great is going to happen.
Yeah.
And the Blues just had no answers for any of them. You had Nietzsche getting on the board as well for his first goal as part of the Avalanche. Some unfortunate bounces, but more so just a lackluster effort. And
Yeah.
you bring us to now, what are they, 25th or 26th in the league?
Yeah.
They have some of the worst power play, both for and power play or penalty kills in the league. I don't know how you win if you're not going to be effective in either of those metrics. And something would have to drastically change. And we have Utah tonight, and there's maybe some lines previews we could do. And
Yes.
then you have a gauntlet. You have the Oilers, Florida, and the Blackhawks, not counting them. But those
Mhm.
last three at home, and if somehow, some way, we do the impossible and we win 4 games in a row against good teams, that would put us probably right back into it, I would imagine. I don't see that happening. So, what do
Mhm.
you think?
Yeah, not a playoff team, I'm with you, but I wish I could disagree because I would love some playoff hockey. I know that that was some of the prime time stuff in 2019 through 22 of seeing some Blues hockey, although it's kind of weird seasons with COVID. But I will say that the Blues have been outscored 16-4 in the last 4 games. That's not something that's sustainable. And also, I think the 5-0 thing is obviously the kicker there. But I think when you look at the team and you think that just evaluating their play, as we've done this whole episode, I don't see it happening. I don't, unless people have some radical change at a pretty crucial point in the season, and that'd be incredible to watch. People like Thomas and Kyrou and Buchnevich, all those guys stepping up to the plate, and maybe Neighbors too. That's the way it happens. I don't see it happening any other way, and I don't see it happening this season. And Jordan Bennington and Hofer, I don't see them improving. I see this being a pretty similar Bennington season to what we saw 2 years ago, which was when Billy Husso was playing in the playoffs because Bennington was not the hot goalie at the time. So I see
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean, yeah, I would totally agree. I would like to preview just briefly. I don't want to go really over an hour, preferably, but the lines for tonight are a bit comical, in my opinion. First of all, Robert Thomas and Pareko are questionable. They're both sick. Pareko missed Friday night because he had an illness. Apparently, Thomas also probably got exactly what he had, so he's questionable. But projected lineup, given both of them play, is first line Booch, Robert Thomas, Kyrou. This one's funny. Second line is Holloway, Braden Shen, and Matthew Joseph.
Oh,
So
oh God.
Texier looks up and all of a sudden is downgraded from the first line to the fourth, playing with Torp, Foxa. And then the third line is Neighbors. Sundquist is back and Bolduc.
Oh God.
So I don't really know what to say on that.
Yeah.
I understand why Montgomery wants to play with lines, but there is a diminishing returns factor for playing with all these lines. These guys need a little bit more chemistry. You can't put Matthew Joseph on a line with Dylan Holloway and Braden Shen. Like I don't know why you would. I like Matthew Joseph. I think he's a big effort guy. I appreciate his play, but is he a second liner in the NHL? God, you can even make a case that Braden Shen shouldn't even be on the second line in the NHL, and we have two of them. We have Joseph and Braden Shen on the second line of our team, and it's just something that I don't understand what needs to change there. Maybe Bolduc and Neighbors take steps up, but it's concerning. And then you have Broberg, Fowler, Suter, Kessel, Tucker, Falk.
Hmm.
So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on those?
Interesting. I don't know. I think the defense, I think no matter how you kind of structure it, I think you're gonna get pretty similar outcomes each time. I don't worry about the defense as much as I used to on them. But the Falk Tucker thing, you see it. He's a third pairing right
Concerning.
now. He's a third pairing. That shows a lot and is concerning. But I want to kind of wrap up. You wanted to talk about some of your picks for tonight.
Yeah, I know that betting has just become legalized in Missouri. We don't have access to those major platforms, though. So I'm going with underdogs for mine because it's legal and they have a lot of different prop plays for individual players. So I think that's fun. I did this last week because I am pretty much just going to keep doing it until it happens because he has to break out of the slump that he's in, whether it's Buchnevich or Thomas. But I'm putting both of them to register. I'm putting Thomas to register more than a point and Booch to have more than a point as well. Multi-point games for both of them. This is a huge game, and they struggle at Utah all of the time. That's where our dreams go to die as a hockey team.
Clayton
And
Keller.
Clayton Keller. Oh, maybe I should just redo that then.
I wouldn't
Clayton
even
Keller, Clayton Keller to have 5 goals. I would love it. I would take that over. I would take that over Booch having a point. But I think Clayton Keller, whatever his point total is, and what that spread would be for his prop, if it's a point and a half, take it. Take it.
You're right.
He murders the St. Louis Blues and has been for 4 years.
Yeah.
So take that. That's my pick. Scratch Booch and Thomas.
Well, okay. That's and also if we're talking money line, then and obviously that's not underdog, but if we're talking money line, I think the Blues break the 4-game streak today. Tonight.
Wow.
I think they do. I think 5 would just be the end of it all, and I think they know it. And I don't think they'd let that happen tonight, especially against a team who is. They know that they can match up pretty well against, and even though it's stupid Keller, I think they can figure it out. But my prop would be Benner over 30.5 tonight. Absolute or whatever it is, whatever the over is on his saves, give it to me. He's gonna have an extra night either way. I don't care.
We'll do a better job of that next time to actually have those lines. But I like that one too. I think that should be a good play. If Bennington doesn't get pulled, I don't even know what's going on with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am not very hopeful. You said they're going to win. I'm going to say they're going to lose. Unfortunately. And then I think if they were to lose tonight, I think that tank, that elusive concept that we talk about where no fan really wants to hear it, but sometimes just kind of needs to happen, may be on and dialed up to 11 after if they were to lose this game. So we'll see how tonight goes. It's at 6:00 Central Time, taking on Utah Hockey Club, and they're back at home on Tuesday against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And then you have Tkachuk homecoming in St. Louis with Florida, and then Bedard and Co. coming to St. Louis on Saturday.
Can't wait for all those, and we'll be back next Sunday, similar time, maybe a little bit earlier. We'll get that out in the socials when need be. But this is it for the first episode of Puck Watching. We hope you've all enjoyed. We enjoyed it, and we're going to be doing this hopefully every Sunday for the next couple weeks. And so we look forward to that. And have a great week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.